Hey people, what's up? This is your lovely host, Ari in Beijing, or as I like to call it, Ari in New York City. Today we're going to talk about why it's better to learn one language instead of more than one languages. And you might hate me for this, you might love me for it, but this is just my opinion, and I gotta say it. So here we go. And first, let me just say one thing straight out of the box. I understand it's totally hypocritical for me to be saying this, having brought so many polyglots on this show. Really, the key reason for why I believe this to be true is that depth is better than breadth, right? So if you learn one language really, really well, that is much better than learning 10 languages, at a basic level. So in the modern economy, people tend to specialize in certain things, right? Some people might become welders, some people become plumbers, and people tend to get really good at some specific thing. Now, the problem with only being so-so at a number of different languages is that those languages aren't really useful to anybody but yourself. Like, they're fun to learn, they enhance your knowledge of languages, and if you really want to do it, go ahead, but it's not going to be very useful to anyone in particular, your ability to speak, Farsi at a very basic level. And in fact, an employer is going to find it much more useful if they see that you speak Spanish at a really high near native level than if you speak Spanish, French, German, and Italian, but in not very useful degrees. You can say a few words, you can have basic conversations. To actually get useful in a certain language, you need to speak it at a really high level, and if you can't really get to that level, it's kind of useless. Right, so really the idea behind this is that once you get to a certain level of a language, it stops being just for fun, and it starts to become an actually really useful communication tool. So if I'm learning Russian, and I can only speak a little basic Russian, that's probably not going to get me very far, except on train, for buying train tickets in Russia. But if I get my Russian to near native level ability, well, then all of a sudden, I can watch the news in Russian. I can analyze political events in Russian. I can, read financial reports in Russian, and all of a sudden my skills become much more valuable to employers or to family members or whatever, because there's a point at which you reach studying in a certain language when it stops being useless, it stops being just kiddie fun, and actually you reach a critical point in your language skills where, bam, a switch flips, and all of a sudden, your language is now useful to you. And this doesn't really just apply to employers either, right? This applies equally well to your own personal life, right? So if you're learning one language and you're really getting good at that language, there's going to come a point at which your knowledge of Mandarin is going to become really useful in your own personal life. Like, there was a point when I was learning Mandarin where I realized, holy cow, this thing is not just a fun thing that I'm learning. I can all of a sudden speak to all these people and have meaningful conversations, really deep and meaningful conversations with people in Mandarin, and it's actually useful to me now. But you might ask, well, what's the harm in just studying a few other languages in addition to the main one that I'm studying? Well, the harm is that you're going to be distracted from your main task, which should be to study the one language that you're trying to get really good at, right? So if you're trying to learn Mandarin really well, and you say all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to go learn Spanish or Russian or whatever, you're going to take away from time that you could be using to improve your Mandarin and getting it better and better and better and being able to have more and more meaningful conversations and understand more things in Mandarin. And unless you are at literally a native level in Mandarin, or whatever the language you're studying is, there's always more that you can do to improve. So I don't think it makes sense to study another language until you've really perfected the language that you're currently studying, which, let's be realistic, is going to take you long enough time that, for all practical purposes, the best advice I can give you is just to stick with one language. And again, I definitely do not mean to begrudge or, offend anyone who is learning multiple languages, because I think that there is a lot of personal value and linguistic value that can be gained from studying multiple languages. But, for me, learning one language really well is much more meaningful than learning a bunch of languages to only middle varying degrees. So like with me in Mandarin, for example, there's lots of things that I would love to go out there and study. I really want to learn Italian, I really want to learn Hebrew, I really want to learn Japanese. But I can't, because there's always that one more thing in Mandarin. There's that one line of TV dialogue that I didn't understand, or there's that one comedy show that I missed the joke on, or this one political reference that I didn't get. And I could be spending that time I use in other languages to get my Mandarin to a more and more meaningful level. And I think the value that I gain by improving my Mandarin is much greater than the value I could get by going and studying another language. Okay, that's all I've got. If you agree with me, that's amazing. If you disagree with me, I guess that's great too. But post a comment and let's start a flame war and get all kinds of arguments going about whether it's better to learn one language or learn a lot of languages. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Ari in Beijing. You're awesome, and we're all awesome, and go learn some languages real good. And I'll see you next week. We do this every week, so I'll be seeing you next week. And have a good one.